Hold on, let me see. My bad. Alright, I got the mic on now. Let's get it. Alright, let me see real quick. One thing real quick before we start. Change this. One thing I got. It's like lower it slightly. Alright, and let's see how this goes. What up, y'all? What's good? What map is this? Damn. Motherfucker was chilling. Sheesh. Oh, God, hold on. I'm gonna get my shit together, man. Damn. Motherfuckers is going crazy right now. Memorial Day weekend.
Our troop strength is nearly depleted.
That's crazy. Spawn right into some shit.
Spotted a hostile. 130 meters.
Begin evacuating NOPAD forces. No use staying now.
That's what happens when you start half the round. I mean, really. They was whooping our ass anyway, though. To be honest. Sheesh. He was in a good spot, bro. I think I pushed it a little too far. Fuck, he's laying on the floor. I seen him too. Wow. I was about to say that. I had low health. About to say that must have been a shotgun or something, but I just had low health.
Grenade going out! They're making us pay for every inch we gain here.
Fuck. They just throwing hella shit, bro. That nigga try to slide over here. Oh, he had a shotgun. I was about to say. Ain't no way. Damn. That shit crazy. So difficult, this map. Got him. Damn, what the fuck? Motherfucker crap up on me. Shit crazy. Bitch. Motherfucker did the same shit I did on his partner. Bitch. Motherfucker. I can't even do mad, but I am though. Shit. Dang. Are we even winning? Oh, I'm about to say we gotta push back to B. Hey. Let's go. God damn fire.
Our forces are moving to attack Bravo 1. The Bravo is now secure.
About to say, can you even go in over here? Oh shit, yeah, you can. Motherfucker almost got me too. I got your partner too. Come on, bro. That's crazy. Motherfucker jumped through the fire. That's crazy. Motherfucker jumped through the fire and they give him that shit. That shit crazy, bro. Hold on. Let me see what. Hey. Yeah, that's better. Hey. What? Let me. Alright, fuck it. We'll leave it like that. That's crazy though. I thought I had the motherfucker. Imagine though, if I'd have blicked both of them with the shit. That's the way it was supposed to go. You know what I'm saying? They got the drop on me though. Fuck, where these niggas at? Fuck was that dude at? Now how the hell? He said we need pressure up top. Like, yeah.
Hostiles attacking one of our objectives.
What? That's crazy. It's like they was waiting for me or something. That shit is crazy. Oh, I got my boy. Hey. Yeah. What? Oh, that motherfucker was slick. He slid through. Like, you know what I'm saying? Hey. Oh shit, I forgot about my drink. Yeah. What's up, y'all? What it do? I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you know, all of the above. I ain't got on that new shit, that thread shit though.
Enemy forces control sector Charlie.
My nigga told me I need to be on that.
Sectors under enemy control.
Yeah, dig. But I just ain't took heed just yet. What? What the fuck, bro? They got snipers already. Whoa. Oh, he in the bush. I ain't even see him. We losing? Oh, yeah. Again. Oh. I got stuck on animation. That motherfucker out there just handling business. I guess we gotta be on defense. Cause goddamn.
All forces
Offense is looking crazy right now.
Tells us that, quote, a look at Ormond's history would not be complete without mentioning one of the most famous residents, John D. Rockefeller. Mr. Rockefeller stated that he would live to be 100 years old. Determined to accomplish this, he became a health nut before it was fashionable. He sent his employees to find the most pollution-free place to spend his winters in retirement. They chose Ormond. In 1914, John D. Rockefeller arrived at the Ormond Hotel and rented an entire floor for himself and his staff. End quote. From the moment of its so-called discovery, Florida earned a reputation as the location for not only the Fountain of Youth, but also the original Garden of Eden. It should not surprise us that Rockefeller chose this region as his place of retirement long before it was popular to do so. One of the very first tribes to ever be encountered by both Spanish and French in North America was the Timucua people of Florida and Georgia. In addition to being extraordinarily tall, some of these Indians are recorded as having lived upwards of 300 years old. While this may sound like an impossibility or an exaggeration on the part of European explorers, I assure you that we have good reason to accept such a claim. French Huguenot Jacques Lemoyne encountered the Timucua in 1564 under the leadership of René Goulain de Laudonnière, and reported the following about the stature, eating habits, and longevity of their upper class. Quote, this Chief Athor is an extremely handsome man, intelligent, reliable, strong, of exceptional height, exceeding our tallest man by 1.5 feet, and endowed with a certain restrained dignity, so that in him a remarkable majesty shone forth. Although they hold great feasts in their own way, yet they are temperate in their eating, as a result of which they live for a long time. For one of their chiefs assured me that he was 300 years old, and that his father, whom he showed me, was 50 years older than he. And I can truly say that when I saw him, I thought I was looking at no more than human bones covered with skin. They certainly put Christians to shame, who reduced their span of life by holding immoderate feasts and drinking parties, and who deserve to be handed over for training to these base, uncivilized people and brutish creatures in order to learn restraint. End quote. It was this very people's tribal territory that John D. Rockefeller had not one, but two residences in, the second of which, at Ormond Beach, was explicitly chosen for life-prolonging qualities. Rockefeller is remembered as a temperate eater who neither smoked nor drank, but he had another huge trick up his sleeve. In addition to minding their eating habits, the long-lived Temecula took advantage of Florida spring water and its miraculous properties. Since Florida is more famous for its beaches and swamps, not many people are aware that this state boasts not only the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world, but also the largest, deepest, and highest magnitude. Indians bathed in these springs and lauded them for their healing benefits. At some point in his life, possibly before he even moved to Florida, John D. Rockefeller Sr., the richest man in the world, made the decision to begin only drinking a certain special type of spring water from Orange City, Florida, a short distance from Ormond, both of which are in Volusia County. The following comes to us from the Orlando Sentinel of February 21st, 2001. Quote, "In Orange City, people have been raving about the water since 1891, when C.A. Bullen, from Wisconsin, put in a well near the present-day water plant at 426 South Volusia Ave. The water was said to be 99.99% pure. It was so good, in fact, that oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller, who wintered in Ormond Beach, would have Orange City water delivered to his home and carry it with him on trips. It wasn't just for drinking. He bathed in it as well." According to accounts in Our Story of Orange City, Florida, edited by Joan J. Lafleur. But don't just take Rockefeller's word for it. At the St. Louis Exposition, or World Fair, in 1904, Orange City Water received the highest award that the world can give for its excellence. It ranked highest of 122 entries from 33 states and Canada. Although some residents had their own wells, others took their drinking water from the spring Bullen had discovered. Slowly, more and more people moved to Orange City." End quote. Other publications reflect such a consensus. Authors and researchers George R. Clements, L.V.E. Calloway, Ales Herdlicka, and John Saxer alike all point to the mineral content of Florida spring water as a primary cause of the exceptional stature and increased longevity found in native Floridians. John D. Rockefeller Sr. put that theory to the test and ended up buying in. In support of the theory that Ormond Beach's climate is particularly life-prolonging, we ought to discuss the Fairchild Oak, one of the oldest oak trees in the world. Located in Norman's Bulow Creek State Park, the Fairchild Oak is widely believed to be around 2,500 years old, though mainstream quackademics insist it is closer to 400, as they tend to do. Judging from the much smaller southern live oaks, which I am familiar with, that have been dated by the Smithsonian Institute themselves at roughly 600 years, I am of the opinion that the Fairchild Oak is no less than 1,000 years old. Part 3. The Casements. Let us resume from the official Ormond Beach website. Quote, "After 4 winter seasons at the hotel, supposedly due to a dispute Rockefeller had with the hotel employees, he purchased the home built by Reverend Harwood Huntington, whose wife was the daughter of the creator of the Pullman Train Car Company. The Casements, his winter cottage, was located only a few hundred yards to the south of the Ormond Hotel. Through the years, Ormond residents became accustomed to have the world's richest man as a neighbor. Visitors to see Mr. Rockefeller in Ormond included such popular personalities of the day as the Prince of Wales, Henry Ford, and Will Rogers, to name just a few. Each winter he held an annual Rockefeller Christmas party at the Casements. He invited his Ormond friends to sit around the tree, share gifts, and holiday cheer. End quote. Rockefeller spent most of his time at Ormond golfing and taking long drives in his automobiles. If you'd like to learn more about the hidden occult history of golf and its connections to the ancient Indians of Florida, go watch my Jekyll Island Uncovered video and keep an eye out for upcoming golf content. Rockefeller would take at least one drive a day along the area's world-famous white roads, crafted from ancient Indian shell middens. John would sit in the back seat under a blanket and quite literally pick up the prettiest and youngest girls in the area for his leisurely drive. Despite having a reputation as a devout Baptist, John D. Rockefeller is known to both locals and historians alike as having routinely touched his female passengers inappropriately under the privacy of that blanket. It seems most of his victims did not make a fuss, likely out of fear, but even when told to stop, he proceeded anyway. Official historians even recount an instance in which a young girl jumped from the moving car in an effort to escape. Her
John
pleas
D.
were ignored
Rockefeller
and no charges were brought against the
touchy
richest man
feely
in
with
the
the
world.
hoes, you know what I'm
Annual
saying?
Rockefeller Christmas party at the Casements. He invited his Ormond friends to sit around the tree, share gifts, and holiday cheer. End quote. Rockefeller spent most of his time at Ormond golfing and taking long drives in his automobiles. If you'd like to learn more about the hidden occult history of golf and its connections to the ancient Indians of Florida, go watch my Jekyll Island Uncovered
We're gonna
video
watch that
and
next.
keep an eye out for upcoming golf content. Rockefeller would take at least one drive a day along the area's world-famous white roads, crafted from ancient Indian shell middens. John would sit in the back seat under a blanket and quite literally pick up the prettiest and youngest girls in the area for his leisurely drive. Despite having a reputation as a devout Baptist, John D. Rockefeller is known to both locals and historians alike as having routinely touched his female passengers inappropriately under the privacy of that blanket. It seems most of his victims did not make a fuss, likely out of fear, but even when told to stop, he proceeded anyway. Official historians even recount an instance in which a young girl jumped from the moving car in an effort to escape. Her pleas were ignored and no charges were brought against the richest man in the world. His chauffeurs and bodyguards must have been accustomed to such behavior. This John D. Rockefeller Sr. is certainly a stark contrast from the image of a church mouse philanthropist painted by our corporate mass media. In fact, it is not unlike the left-hand tantric practices of Jeffrey Epstein, also a Florida resident. It is also said that Rockefeller abstained from many
Jeffrey
worldly
Epstein.
pleasures like
Sheesh.
theater and opera for the first 66 years of his life, but from then on lived a bit more indulgent life. One can only wonder if 66 years held a spiritual significance to him other than its inherent
66 years?
association with the devil. The Casements, like the infamous Rockefeller Cottage at Jekyll Island, was constructed in the midst of ceremonial earthworks belonging to the ancient Temukua. One of the largest burial mounds in the area, known as the Ormond Mound, sits in plain view directly across the Halifax River from the Casements. This mound, a true burial mound, was officially studied in 1982, revealing at least 100 individuals interred within it. Rockefeller would have been able to see this macabre landmark every single time he left his front door in the morning or peered out a window, and that's probably just the way he wanted it. Other significant earthworks nearby include the Tomoka Mound Complex, Turtle Mound, and Mount Royal site. For those who don't know, basements are very rare in peninsular Florida, especially on a barrier island like Ormond Beach. Nonetheless, I wanted to see if the Casements had one, since the basement of Indian Mound Cottage played a role in the Federal Reserve sacrifice story, featured in my Jekyll Island Uncovered video. I spoke to a worker at the casements, and this is what she had to say. One more thing, then I'll be out of your hair. Is there a basement here?
It's not accessible to the public, but there is a basement underneath the casement.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I noticed this part drops down almost, 3 feet or so.
Right, and then it's on a slab. We're up a little bit here.
Okay.
So, yeah, there is a basement.
Very cool.
I know, but it seems much
How old is that? That's original?
Yes, the house was built in 19... Yeah, which is very unusual for Florida to have a basement.
Right.
No, there are basements. But when this was built, they put a basement in.
Rockefellers in 1939 also passed from owner to owner numerous times within the next 40 years, becoming a girls' preparatory school and a home for the elderly. In 1959, the property was purchased by the Ormond Hotel Corporation with plans for development. Unfortunately, they never materialized. In 1973, the casements was purchased by the city of Ormond Beach. End quote. Part 4. The Ancient Floridian Origins of the LGBTQ Agenda. The Timucua were an unusual people. In addition to their gargantuan stature and tattooed appearance, roughly a third of the entire adult Timucua population was hermaphroditic or transgender. We again turn to the 1564 first-hand account of French Huguenot Jacques Lemoyne. Quote, "In this country, there are numerous hermaphrodites, a mixture of both sexes. They are considered odious by the Indians, but as they are robust and strong, they are used to carry loads instead of beasts of burden. When the king set out to war, it is the hermaphrodites who transport the supplies. Persons with infectious diseases are carried to places reserved for them, on the shoulders of the hermaphrodites, who supply them with food until they are well again." End quote. Timucuan hermaphrodites were also instrumental in the collection of wild game and the preparation of casina, a sacred black drink made from Yopon holly. Believe it or not, the topic of transgenderism presents another firm link between the Rockefeller family and the Timucua of Ormond Beach. It is a little-known fact that John D. Rockefeller Jr., the only son of John Sr., was actually dressed in girls' clothing for the first 9 or so years of his life. Historians tell us that this was nothing more than the Rockefellers exercising their trademarked sense of frugality by forcing John Jr. into his older sister's hand-me-downs. It would be easy to argue that this was just an insignificant oddity if it weren't for the fact that the Rockefeller family, along with their namesake funds and foundations, have been some of the earliest and most generous patrons of the LGBT agenda, particularly the T for transgenderism. This is only the beginning of a truly terrifying rabbit hole. Among those critical of elite globalist families like the Rockefellers, there exists a large community of researchers who believe that many so-called women playing a prominent role on the world stage today were actually born as men. So-called women who have received such scrutiny would include Michelle Obama, Melinda Gates, Serena Williams, and Barbara Bush, just to name a few. Take, for example, Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France, who recently went viral for having her true identity brought into question. But this time, it was the mainstream media who picked up the story. It should not surprise us to find that multiple women belonging to the Rockefeller dynasty have been accused of being born as male. Abigail Aldrich Rockefeller was the daughter of U.S. Senator and Federal Reserve mastermind Nelson Aldrich. In 1901, she married John D. Rockefeller Jr., who, as we have already mentioned, had a history of dressing as a girl. Abigail's less than feminine appearance has long been the topic of debate, and her own husband once described her as, quote, so gay and young, and so in love with everything, end quote. And yes, I'm aware of the fact that gay can also mean happy, but that's actually going to support this theory even further, as you'll see. The Rockefeller who has received the most scrutiny for her masculine features would be Margaretta Large Fittler, better known as Happy. That's right, Happy Rockefeller. Happy married
found all
Nelson
of them right
Rockefeller
there. That's
in
crazy.
1963, and thus went on to become the First Lady of New York and Second Lady of the United States. However, Nelson had been married before to an equally masculine-looking woman by the name of Mary Todhunter Clark. 6-foot-tall Mary Todhunter Rockefeller, also the First Lady of New York, was simply
Crazy.
known as Todd to friends and family. I kid you not. Todd Rockefeller divorced from Nelson during his governorship on the grounds of, quote, extreme mental cruelty, end quote. Nelson was remarried to Happy before his tenure was over. Homosexuality in general was also practiced among some of the Timucua, which brings me to a title that has been assigned to just about every prominent member of the Rockefeller family. That is, philanthropist. Without spending too much time on this topic, the word philanthropist is generally interpreted as meaning financial benefactor to the less fortunate. In Greek, philo or philo means love, and anthro means man. But its most strictly literal translation is man lover. I bet you'll never look at billionaires the same after hearing them labeled as
Philanthropist means man
philanthropists.
lover.
Like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the ancient Floridian origins of the Rockefeller-funded LGBT agenda. If you'd like to hear these types of topics discussed in more depth, free from ads and censorship, go become a member of the Old World Florida Patreon. Otherwise,
Fuck off. Really? I'm just playing. Alright. Damn, bro. Fuck. Oh shit. I'm just saying, I ain't gonna make it through that. Fuck, bro. Let me see.
in 1910, a group of the richest men in the world took part in a secret meeting at Jekyll Island, Georgia, just across the Florida border. The occasion for this clandestine gathering was the conception of the Federal Reserve banking system as a direct remedy to the Panic of 1907, the first worldwide financial crisis. In 1910, a group of the richest men in the world took part in a secret meeting at Jekyll Island, Georgia, just across the Florida border. The occasion for this clandestine gathering was the conception of the Federal Reserve banking system as a direct remedy to the Panic of 1907, the first worldwide financial crisis of the 20th century. Instead of enhancing the stability of American banking, as these men pretended it would, the Federal Reserve would instead cast the entire Earth into multiple world wars and an even more terrible financial crisis, the Great Depression of 1929. However, with the signing of the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, the men involved in that secret meeting at Jekyll Island guaranteed the fortunes of their respective families and business partners for generations to come. As a direct result of this legislation, a majority of humanity is today fiscally
Gonna look to
enslaved
the right.
by an international cult of banking elite. In 1994, American author, filmmaker, and Army veteran G. Edward Griffin published The Creature from Jekyll Island, which uncovered the secrecy and motives behind that infamous
The
meeting
Creature from
at the
Jekyll
Jekyll
Island.
Island clubhouse. Although the book is wonderfully written and meticulously researched, it failed to consider the unique Native American history of Southeast Georgia and how ancient Indian magic may have fostered such a despicable deed. It would not be until American preacher and Christian mystic Timothy Vance gave a telephone interview around 2012 about a trip to Jekyll Island just before the 2007 financial collapse that a more insidious connection between the Federal Reserve and ritualistic human sacrifice was brought to light. Bence told of how an unusually tall tribe of Indians, known as the Timucua, native to the area, sacrificed their firstborn children in a nearly identical manner to the Canaanites from the Old Testament, going as
Canaanites
far as to
from the
reveal
Old
that a
Testament?
cottage on the island,
Oh, shit.
once owned by John D.
bad.
Rockefeller,
That's what's
one
going
of the
on.
wealthiest men in the world,
Ah,
had been built
My
on
bad.
top of the very spot where a sacrificial altar
That shit
once
fell off.
stood. Although these stories have been touched on by others, I do not believe any have done it the justice it deserves. I found most of these videos to be preoccupied with Hollywood
what the
fairy
fuck
tales,
was that, bro?
lazily edited, and in one case, they had actually selectively censored much of Tim Bence's interview, leaving out vital connections to Israel's historical record of usury and blood sacrifice, along with almost all mentions of Bence's religious inspiration for exposing Jekyll Island in the way that he did. These videos were also lacking in an intimate knowledge of the Florida-Georgia coastline and its native peoples. And on my channel, you can rest assured that you will never see a misleading AI-generated thumbnail or hear an AI-generated script. In light of these shortcomings, my girlfriend and I set out to uncover the forbidden history of Jekyll Island,
I'm just
Georgia,
playing.
and to verify the story of Timothy Bence by actually going
Let's
there
get it.
ourselves.
Let's hear the story.
With God's good graces,
I'm
much
gonna skip it a little
further,
bit.
to conduct their secretive meetings in as La Florida, as they relate to the hidden history of Florida and Georgia. This video is lengthy and information dense,
It is
so
good,
make
though.
sure
Check
to
him
kick
out.
back, spark up, and pour yourself a little
Oh,
liquid
Florida.
sunshine while you're at it. The views expressed in this video do not necessarily reflect my own. Now enjoy.
Welcome to Florida, baby.
Dominated by palmetto and scrub oak. Mammals found on the island include white-tailed deer, raccoons,
They got hella animals.
rabbits, and
They
squirrels.
got everything.
The tidal creeks and streams of the salt marsh provide a variety of resources, including seasonal fish and shellfish. The indigenous people who inhabited the area when Europeans first arrived were the Timucua and Guale tribes. Keep these tribes in mind, as we will be discussing them in depth further on. French Huguenots led by Jean Ribault are the first Europeans to have attempted an official settlement on Jekyll around 1564, as they colonized what was then known as La Florida. But the Spanish may have landed on the island as early as 1510, giving it the name La Isla de Balenas, meaning Island of Whales, while the French called it Ile de la Somme. Now we come to the naming
couldn't
of
get 'em.
Jekyll Island. In 1733, after founding the province of Georgia for England, General James Oglethorpe named Jekyll Island in honor of his friend, Sir Joseph Jekyll, a British barrister, judge, and high-ranking Whig politician who sat in the English and British House of Commons for 40 years, from 1697 to 1738. Bearing this name, it
1738.
would seem Jekyll Island was destined for a future of finance, as Joseph was a wealthy financier himself. He was instrumental in convincing the House of Commons to fund the colony of Georgia. Never before had Britain directly supplied a colony with government funds. Joseph would also personally contribute
Oh, there was somebody
$600
behind me
to
or
the colony,
something? What the fuck?
which was quite a bit of money in those days. Interestingly, around 1740, Jekyll Island saw the creation of Georgia's first ever alcoholic brewery. In 1792, Christophe Dubignon, a Frenchman fleeing the French Revolution, purchased a significant parcel in Jekyll. The island was then confiscated by Great Britain after its then owner, John Martin, was accused of treason. Although it would fall into the hands of Americans, the War of 1812 saw British military raids against the island. When a ship
I saw
known
him
as the
too, bro.
Wanderer docked at Jekyll Island in 1858, its human cargo became one of the last known shipments of blacks sold into American slavery. After the Civil War, Jekyll Island would quickly become a favored retreat
I
for
was about to
many
say,
of
did
the
I get it
world's
all?
wealthiest families. In 1886, the island was purchased by the Jekyll Island Club, a turn-of-the-century vacation resort patronized by
The
America's
Jekyll Island
leading
Club,
families.
baby.
By 1904, Munsey's magazine had deemed Jekyll Island, quote, the richest, the most exclusive, the most inaccessible club in the world, end quote. These men and women came to fish, swim, golf, hunt, shoot skeet, sail, and ride horses, and as we will see shortly, to conduct their secretive meetings in absolute privacy. It was common for these billionaires, in today's money, to construct or purchase a small home on the island, in addition to being a member of the island's exclusive club. Let us give a brief description for some of the cottages as to demonstrate the degree of wealth which was attracted to Jekyll Island at the turn of the century. Dubignon Cottage was built in 1884 by John Eugene Dubignon, the fourth generation owner of the island itself. Hollyburn Cottage was built in 1890 by founding club member Charles Stewart Maurice, a successful American bridge designer. The cottage known as the Infirmary was built in 1890 for the youngest founding member of the Jekyll Island Club, Walter Furness, of the architectural firm Furness, Evans and Company. Indian Mound Cottage was originally constructed in
Stay
1892
behind us, bro.
for shoe magnate and philanthropist Gordon Mackay, but would later be purchased by William Rockefeller Jr. in 1905. William's older brother, John Davison Rockefeller, the principal founder of Standard Oil, remodeled the house in 1910. The name of the cottage comes from the fact that it was erected in the footprint of an ancient Indian burial mound or shell midden. Make sure to keep that in mind. Moss Cottage was built for William Struthers, Jr. in 1896, but the identity of the original architect has not officially been determined. Interestingly, Struthers owned one of the largest marble firms in the country, and his family is said to have contributed to the construction of Philadelphia's Second Bank of the United States, among other notable buildings. The building known as the Sans Souci was one of America's very first condominiums, being erected on Jekyll in 1896 by Henry Hyde, the owner of the largest life insurance company in America at the time.
Ah, they playing their music.
The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is an 1886 Gothic novella by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson. It follows Gabriel John Utterson, a London-based legal practitioner who
Trying to get to the
investigates
golf
a
shit
series of
part. Let's hear the golf part.
And when the federal tried
Preacher and Christian.
But I was aware of something about Jekyll Island, her in, thought it once, but where the bones were. He says, wow. We don't have a choice because we're subject to it.
Yeah, that's why
they
call it circulation, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're circulating a talisman that has evil attached to it right from its conception.
Is it possible, now I'm not saying thus saith the Lord here, but is it possible that a lot of the financial blessings and a lot of the things that God has promised his people, and that we're supposed to be the head, not the tail, and we're supposed to be, we ought to be running the world in a righteous, holy way, not in this room that he had come to.
The presidential suite.
When a lot of those folks
And then incorporated into it.
Absolutely massive.
And show the Timucua.
Absolutely massive. These individuals were very large.
These individuals were very large.
These
and
individuals
the,
were very
preservation
large.
is just so immaculate that it's hard to believe that these are 8,000 years old.
These are 8,000 years old.
I mean, we've had researchers come in here and say, "Are you sure that they're this old?" They really could be a lot younger. So even just compared to me, right, in terms of a hip placement, my knee is up here, and I'm 5'11". So these are really large individuals, right? And we have some with very unique traits.
It's one thing to be ignorant of stuff from across the country, but how can the state of Georgia employ experts who are oblivious to significant findings from their own backyard and professional territory? She then went on to say something completely out of line.
I can assure you the state of Georgia doesn't pay us enough to hide that stuff, so, yeah.
What? What the f?
I can assure you the state of Georgia doesn't pay us enough to hide that stuff, so, yeah. Yeah.
Nobody said anything about hiding evidence or obscuring the truth. If I were the sensitive type, I would label that remark as rude, accusatory, and a bit paranoid. In fact, if I were paranoid, I would probably deduce that she was intentionally obscuring the truth from us, based off of her demeanor and responses during this encounter. Why else would a state employee treat us so poorly just for seeking information at a museum of all places? And by the way, we paid over $20 to gain entry to this museum, only to be patronized by a young and ill-informed female employee. Maybe what she really meant to say was, the state of Georgia doesn't pay us enough to know that stuff. She then goes on to show her hand, as they say.
There's a YouTube video that goes around. I think some of it's gone on to TikTok as well, but none of it's true.
Well, a lot of it is true.
This pretty much confirms that she was preoccupied with debunking the Tim Bentz interview, rather than earnestly educating us about the island. My girlfriend, who had hitherto been holding her tongue for fear of upsetting the so-called expert, pointed out that
the way that the two Indians are depicted and illustrated would beg to differ.
Yeah, so, Laudonniere.
So the one who did those, it was not the guy who came over here. He illustrated it based off of notes, but he was trying to sell some books, so he sensationalized everything.
if the so-called expert had let me finish, and not interrupted me for the 5th time, I would have saved her the embarrassment of again confusing the facts. She claimed these illustrations were not made by a direct witness. The truth, however, is that they were made by a direct witness, in the form of a painter, Jacques de Lemoyne, who accompanied René Goulaine de Laudonnière on his expedition through Timucua territory around 1564. His original paintings would later be converted into engravings by Theodore de Bry. Although the engravings became more widely circulated, the original paintings do exist and show the Timucua to be just as gigantic as Tim Bence and others have suggested.
Well, a few of the original drawings do exist.
Yeah.
And they are a full head taller than the Europeans.
Yeah, because he was sensationalizing it because he was trying to sell books.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they were a tall people.
Yeah, but unfortunately it's not quite as fun as some of the stories would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although our so-called expert was adamant that the illustrations were sensationalized to sell books, we have already debunked this by establishing that they were originally painted by somebody other than he who profited off their reproductions.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they did sacrifice. They did.
Again, that was not here on Jetboil. Again, that was part of the stuff that was added in later.
So that was
we don't have any archaeological evidence or any actual documents from people who visited the Timucua in Galway saying that had happened. It was something that got added in later. Yeah.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry my answers aren't quite as fun.
Almost.
It's alright. Maybe I'll come bring a bun sometime. You guys can see.
Alright, y'all have a good one.
Thank you, too.
Alright, here it's about to start right now after this part.
They are like programmed hardcore.
Yeah.
The way I see it, there are three possibilities as to why she was so dismissive of my questions. The first possibility is that she was merely doing her job and repeating what she has been told to say when confronted with anything outside of the norm. However, her smug attitude and eagerness to pigeonhole us with theories that we had not even mentioned makes me doubt that possibility. It is also worth noting that she provided us with no significant dates or names during our entire conversation. The next possibility is that she had already had a negative encounter with a conspiracy theorist during her time working there who might have treated her poorly or accused her of obscuring the truth, causing her to treat us with contempt for asking similar questions. However, I would again point to the fact that she was coming out ahead of me by connecting my innocent questions with a deeper conspiracy, which was not the approach I was taking. The other possibility is that she and/or the people who educated her are intentionally obscuring the truth. Even though our conversation started out very chill and finished without any tension or disrespect on my part, we couldn't help but notice that the so-called expert's eye was twitching uncontrollably throughout our conversation. Erratic eye movements are often a textbook indicator of lying. It could also be an indicator of vaccine injury or even demonic possession. As I have mentioned before, we had invoked a blessing of protection in the name of Jesus Christ against any and all dark magic on the island. We were also thoroughly bathed in cigar, sage, and marijuana smoke. Either of these combined with the fact that we were seeking sensitive information could have aggravated negative entities residing in her body or elsewhere on the island. To put it plainly,
I knew
it
he was
looked like she
behind me.
was fighting something, and it wasn't us. Despite the dissuasions of the museum officials, we can still verify much else of what Tim Bence stated in the original interview. Firstly, there is the matter of whether the Timucua used recurve or double curve bows, a design common in Eurasia, but rather uncommon for Native Americans. Tim claims to have seen fragments of one with the museum director, but as of 2024, no bows were on display. We do have, however, evidence in the form of a portrait from 1859, clearly showing a recurved bow, entitled Image of a Warrior or Chief of the Timucua of Florida, by Hercule Catenacci. Even earlier depictions of the Timucua from the previous century by Theodore de Bry also show them with unusually long, recurve-style bows. Tim also made the claim that the Timucua left behind artifacts which contrasted those of typical Native Americans. In support of this notion, we find that the Timucua were one of the few Native American groups to use body armor crafted from heavy metal. Timucua men were known to wear large, circular, copper breastplates into battle. These were suspended from the neck by a string, then fastened with a strap or skin slung across the torso. Although, the following example suggests more sophisticated straps may have been used by some. The Timucua, with their breastplates and opulent ornamentation, would go on to inspire great European works of art. Take, for example, the Moor with the emerald cluster. Manufactured around 1724 by the Royal German goldsmith Johann Melchior Dinglinger, together with Balthasar Permoser. One of the few things which Bentz did not discuss, however, was the general appearance of the Timucua, beyond their extraordinary stature. It is true that the Timucua were very tall, but their height would have been further exaggerated by the fact that they, and their ancestors, exhibited cranial deformation. On top of their already elongated skulls, the Timucua warriors wore lavish plumes, tall enough to make a 7-foot man appear as though he were 9 feet tall. Both sexes were tattooed, but the men especially. According to some sources, about a third of the adult Timucua population were actually hermaphrodites, who opted out of warfare and thus were responsible for the manual labor. They also acted as receptive sexual partners for the men and bore a ceremonial significance.
Interestingly, androgyny, hermaphroditism, or a third gender, serves as a further link between the Timucua Indians and ancient Canaanites, Israelites, Akkadians, and so on. Tumtum is a term that appears in Jewish rabbinic literature. It usually refers to a person whose sex is unknown because their genitalia are hidden, undeveloped, or difficult to determine. In Babylonia, Sumer, and Assyria, certain types of individuals who performed religious duties in the service of Inanna/Ishtar have been described as a third gender. They worked as sacred prostitutes or hired duels, performed ecstatic dance, music and plays, wore masks and had gender characteristics of both women and men. The Inari were the Scythians androgynous, or effeminate, priests and shamanistic soothsayers who played an important role in the Scythian religion. The Anayu were affiliated to an orgiastic cult of the goddess Artampasa, and of the Scythians' ancestral snake-legged goddess in their forms strongly influenced by Near Eastern fertility goddesses, and the rites of the Anayu thus combined indigenous Scythian religious practices of a shamanistic nature, which were themselves related to those of indigenous Siberian peoples, as well as ones imported from Levantine religions. As with the Timucua, this class tended to the sick and dying. The fact that the Timucua would sodomize and dismember their defeated enemy after a battle serves as an unexpected further link to the Levant. According to the Encyclopedia of Homosexuality by Wayne R. Dines, the ancient Egyptians were also accustomed to, quote, sodomize enemies after their defeat on the battlefield.
The warriors wore their hair in a bun on top of their head, while the hermaphrodites and women let their hair grow down. Their nails were so strong and kept so sharp that the men could use them as lethal weapons on the battlefield. Their skin color ranged from dark to light, as Timucua was a language group, not a single tribe. That being said, they covered their skin with bear and alligator grease to protect against the harsh sun and relentless insects. The noblemen and noblewomen were richly decorated with jewels and precious metals, along with colorful animal pelts dyed in a fashion that rivaled the finest clothing of Europe. The common women crafted impressive clothing from the Spanish moss, which abounds in the American Southeast. The Timucua women, like the Seminole who would come after them, were regarded as among the most beautiful on earth. Another strong link connecting Jekyll's wealthy modern residence to its ancient inhabitants is pottery making. Under one of the cottages, we discovered a club of pottery makers. An odd choice of hobby for some of the richest men in the world, even to this day on Jekyll Island. One of the principal pastimes of the Timucua was also pottery making. Then there is the matter of the sacrificial altar itself. In an attempt to debunk the story of Timothy Vance and the viral videos exposing the Federal Reserve's connection to ancient Indian sacrifices, some academics and salty historians have pointed out that the Timucua crafted their altars from tree stumps, not from stone, as Vance claimed in his controversial interview. This argument has arisen from the fact that DeBry's 18th century engravings of the Timucua depict them sacrificing atop a leveled tree stump, not stone. However, in the early 1980s, an ancient Indian altar made from stone was discovered at the opposite end of Timucua territory, in Newport Richey, Florida, just north of Tampa Bay. Many mainstream Florida historians are simply unaware that this altar exists. Nestled into the deck of an unassuming sports bar, it is one of America's most mysterious ancient relics, a large limestone boulder featuring two distinct rock carvings. The rock, known locally as the Atlas Stone, has two faces carved into it, the larger of which is believed to be a prototypical male, and the smaller a prototypical female. However, the identities of these personages have not officially been determined, nor do we know who carved these faces to begin with. Petroglyphs of this sort are not typical of the eastern United States, and are even rarer in Florida. To demonstrate how neglected this site is by the mainstream academics, one need only count the number of websites and reference guides which mistakenly claim that the Crystal River stela are Florida's only petroglyphs, completely oblivious of the fact that this stone sits on public display less than 50 miles away. We do know for a fact that this rock served as a sacred site and ceremonial altar for at least one group of Native Americans, either the Tocobaga, the Timucua, Calusa, or their predecessors. We also know for a fact that offerings were made on this stone, and probably animal or human sacrifice, to some great pre-Columbian American deity. Thus we can deduce that the Timucua and their ancestors used both stump and stone altars.
The Phoenicians, known in the Bible as Canaanites, were known to carve faces onto rocks, especially their stone anchors. Mysteriously carved stone faces are common to virtually all the corners of the world where the Phoenicians are believed to have visited. The petroglyphs on the anomalous stone altar at Newport Richey, Florida, serves as a substantial link between Canaanites of the Bible and the Timucua of Florida.
Part 5. Canaanites in America. We should also address the connection which Bentz made between the Timucua of Florida and Georgia and the Israelites or Canaanites from the Middle East, as described in the Old Testament. There is considerable evidence to show that Canaanites, Israelites, or Phoenicians did in fact cross the Atlantic in ancient times, perhaps bringing practices such as sacrifice of the firstborn with them. It has long been theorized that much of the high-quality copper which fueled the Eurasian Bronze Age had to have come from the United States, with the Phoenicians, of course, being the most likely suspects for its transfer. Many Americans are also ignorant of the fact that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, better known as the Mormon Church, is largely predicated on the belief that ancient Israelites traveled to the United States, landing in North Florida, where they were eventually absorbed into the Mongoloidal Native Americans of today. And for those thinking that the Mormons are some fringe group, you may like to know that they number over 17 million strong. For comparison, the Jews of the world only number around 15 million. Evidence for these theories comes to us in the following forms. Firstly, we find no shortage of cultural links between ancient Israelites and Native Americans, particularly from the southeast United States. For example, the natives of Florida and the surrounding areas were known to have their foreskin removed with a stone knife. I can assure you, this is no fringe theory, as it was officially remarked upon in the History of Circumcision by Peter C. Remondino, M.D., first published in 1891. The native Muskogee, Creek, and Seminole people of the southeast United States were also known to wear their hair and fashion their clothing in nearly identical manners as so-called Israelites of both today and the ancient world. The list goes on and on. Secondly, there is the overwhelming number of rock carvings and artifacts discovered in the Americas with either Hebrew or Phoenician or similar writing on them. This would include the Bat Creek inscription, Los Lunas Decalogue stone, the Newark Holy Stones, the Grave Creek stone, and a number of others. The Cherokee are known to have had a complete phonetic alphabet, known as the Cherokee syllabary, and surprisingly, they bear much genetic affiliation with the Jews of Eurasia. American geneticist Donald Panther Yates, for example, has published ample findings which reflect such a migration. Then there are the multitude of ancient geometric earthworks scattered across the United States that employ standard units of measurement, like the stade, which were unknown to the American Indian, but more than familiar to ancient Israelites. If you'll remember, Tim told a story about sacrificial altars having a link with ancient banking in the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. Any potential link between Jekyll Island and the ancient city of Jerusalem is greatly substantiated by the phonetic similarity between the words Jekyll and shekel. For those unaware, a shekel is an ancient Mesopotamian coin, usually of silver. The word shekel was originally a unit of weight, roughly equal to 11 grams, and thus became a term for currency in ancient Tyre, Carthage, and Judea, right up into modern Israel. The word shekel has thus been used in and around the city of Jerusalem for thousands of years. Despite its historic and global usage, merely using the word shekel can land one in hot water due to its innate associations with global economic conspiracies. However, such a phonetic link cannot be ignored, considering the financial infamy of Jekyll Island.
On that note, I'm gonna holler at y'all later. I got some other shit I gotta do, but yeah. Stay up. You know what I'm saying? Keep it pimping, you know what I'm saying? Even you squares, man, do the best you can. You dig? Alright, I holla.